Hey, we're on the internet, folks.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Greetings, one and all.
Welcome.
I miss you lot.
Yes, we're back.
We're back with a
Finally.
vengeance. Who have we got in the here?
We haven't done it for so long. We don't know what to say now, do we?
We don't say now.
Yeah, we haven't got a clue. We have a guest. We have a guest panelist. So welcome to Mychael McNeely. We're going to talk about the topic, communities. We've had a couple of comments. We saw this one before, Mychael. So we had a comment before we even came on air, which is quite a good one. So it's interesting that, you know, a weakness in the movement is lack of community support. It really depends on what that means, though, doesn't it? You know, because, you know, a lot of people kind of make comments about movement unity as well, which, again, is problematic. I'm not suggesting this one is, but and the difficulties arising from intentional communities. So does anybody know what that means? Is that the intentional communities? I know there's kind of imagined communities. That there's a famous sociology book about that. So
I think of intentional communities as places like Findhorn. Are you familiar with Findhorn Garden up in Scotland?
Yeah, it's a community. Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like a gardening community, isn't it?
It is, and yeah, people come there from all around the world, including me at one point.
Wow.
Not to live for a long time, but just to visit. Yeah. It's I think of intentional communities more as places where, you know, it could be a small setting where a bunch of people live together in a home, or it could be like a larger, almost like a commune type of situation. And that's really kind of beyond what I am, you know, what I know much about. So this idea of community that I was thinking of for today's talk is more to do with just community in general. The community that we develop in our own towns and even online, like we're doing now.
We're an online community, all right. So who have we got in the house there, Wendy?
Oh, who have we got? Well, Jonah left that message at 3:53 p.m. So I don't know if Jonah's actually here. Are you still here, Jonah? Hello, if you are. We have, of course, Jeremy the Ape, and we've got Ronnie Lee and Deb Thompson, and we've got Philip Murphy. I don't know why I'm saying everyone's surnames as well. It's just the thing that I'm doing today, apparently. And we've got Bernie V, Greg Fuller, and Joanna Hardman and Jennifer Fowles. Hard to be consistent, sorry. But yeah, so lots of our regulars. Hello and welcome. It's really lovely to see you all, and I did miss you all for 2 weeks.
You must be able to speak faster than that, Wendy. So right. So what we're going to talk about? What we're going to talk about first, folks. So now that we're all here and we've got an audience.
Well,
yeah.
Should we start with the slideshow?
Yes, let's start with the slideshow, and that will prompt us to say a few things. I guess that will be the way to go. So let me just get this on.
Just a question, actually, for everyone who is here in the chat, because I know we, like everyone here, apart from, actually, I don't recognise Greg, actually. I don't recognise Greg's name, but people who are here, generally, we recognise these names. Do the people who are here in the chat and watching, do you see this as a community when you join the show, when you watch us each week? Are you coming to join as a part of having that sense of community with us and with the other viewers as well? Is that
I'd like to introduce Greg, if you don't mind. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh, okay. Hey, Greg.
Greg has a wonderful website called justiceforanimals.org that he curates, and he does a really amazing job on it. You could definitely, if you haven't checked it out, go and check out justiceforanimals.org.
Great. Welcome, Greg. Nice to see new names.
Going back to your question about coming every week to build a community, I think it's a part of their punishment, I think, isn't it? I think they've been sent by social services or something.
Community service.
Philip says, Philip, hang on. They've answered our question. We better Philip says, community here, absolutely. Thank you, Philip. And it's good to have you here. all the way from New York. What crazy accent. And then we have Deb saying also, Tars is definitely a vegan community to me, and so is Joanna. And Greg saying hello back. And Jennifer is, yes, your show has a nice sense of community. Thanks, Vegan Songstress.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, Vegan Songstress.
So the first slide, Michael, is you looking down on the world. So this was,
Right.
so this is just a whiteboard that you wrote out, right? So
yeah. So I don't know if you've heard the idea of a thing that's called street epistemology. It's kind of a growing, I don't know what you'd call it, a hobby maybe. There's a bunch of people on online that do this thing called street epistemology. Most of them come from the atheist community or something similar to that. But they go out and they talk to people, and they just put up a sign like that. You know, it could be, some are simpler than others, but they go out and they have chats with people in public, and then they film it and put it on YouTube. So it's real easy to find these chats. But the idea is to ask people questions about how they developed a strongly held belief that they have, and kind of just explore that with them. It's not really to tell them how to feel or to try to influence them necessarily, although I would say there is definitely a bent in the community at large where they're trying to get people to look at their strongly held religious beliefs in order to question them, and hopefully get to the point where they, change those beliefs, although that is not explicitly put out there. So I really love the idea of it. And I thought maybe it might work to do this in a vegan context. And so I just decided to give it a try. That was just one of the ways that I've believed in outreach sort of activism for a long time. That's kind of like been my thing for as long as I've been vegan, or close to the beginning of it. And this was just something I tried and experimented with, went down to Balboa Park and just had this sign, and then just had people, if they kind of come up and they're curious, they read the sign, and if they want to talk about it, then they do. And it was actually had some great conversations. So yeah, that was that idea. That's why I put that slide up there.
What does it actually say? What to you? What's that?
Is that supposed to be a D? What do you think?
Spelling.
Oh,
I just realized that you said that. Yeah, what do you think?
It was a D that got one off.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I probably should have fixed that.
I just want to mention that I see Sarah calling in the chat, and I just wanted to yes, her wonderful book about animal resistance.
I'm so glad she's
Animal
here.
Resistance in the global capitalist era.
Yes, I'm very glad that Sarat is here. Thank you for coming. So that's that one. Did you?
Yeah. What's the bit of tech at the top of the screen, Michael? What's that screen thing? What is it?
Oh, that's just a timer.
Is it a timer?
Yeah, it's a timer.
Okay. Right.
So yeah, the idea is to give people to not scare people away by thinking they're going to have to be there for a long time. And so if they go over 5 minutes, it's totally fine with me. And that's the case with almost anybody that does street epistemology, is that they kind of start with a general short amount of time. And then, if someone wants to continue, they'll just be really respectful of their time and say, okay, look, our 5 minute timer is off, is done here. If you want to stop, fine. And if you want to keep going, I'm fine to keep going.
Yeah, it's a bit like that Monty Python sketch, isn't it? Is this a 5 minute argument, or is it the full half hour?
Maybe that's where that came from.
What does everyone think about Ronnie's comment? I think lack of focus on veganizing our own local communities is a problem for our movement.
Yes. I mean, obviously, I think we'd all agree with that. And I mean, also, what Ronnie would go on to say is that we need to have our own communities, veganized, but also, vegan education needs to be going on everywhere and all the time. And we don't seem to have achieved that as a movement. But of course, a certain pandemic has got in the way, rather, the last couple of years anyway. So
it really has. Yeah, I mean, you guys, Roger and Ronnie, you guys have both inspired me a lot to do local outreach. And I think there's, as we get into this conversation, we can talk more about it. But I think there's a lot of ways that this needs to come out, but local outreach in every single town across the world would have a huge impact. And I think we're in agreement on that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, Ronnie's got a new video out with Wenda, where he delves into that as well. That would be worth checking out, people. In terms of my future plans, because we're not really back on the street in Dublin, but the songstress and I and another couple of activists, we're out tomorrow because we've got a Christmas kind of vegan cheese giveaway going on, including Elvis.
With Elvis?
Yeah,
oh, Elvis. Yeah,
yeah, because Elvis has had a hip operation. So not that he sings hip hop, it's just that he had a hip hop. and so we tried to get him out a couple of months ago, and he wasn't up to it. But we kind of saw him struggling down the road the other day, and so I texted him, and he goes, "Yeah, well, I was thinking of going out on Tuesday, so it's all coming together with the King tomorrow, so that'll be
That's awesome."
Yeah.
Amazing.
So this is books donated. There's not a lot there, Mychael. What's going on?
Yeah, so Carol Adams and Patty Brightman and Jenny Messina wrote this book, and several for about, I guess, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that. Never Too Late to Go Vegan, and they put up, I can't remember if it was Carol or Jenny or both of them put up an offer on their Facebook page that if anybody was interested in distributing these books to local senior living facilities, that they had a donation from somebody to supply those. So I just ordered books from them. I can't remember if I got like maybe 8 or 10 books, and just found some senior living facilities around my area and delivered those to those that had a library, a place where they could keep those. And so that was just one more little kind of outreach idea that was nice and didn't cost me anything except for my time and a little bit of driving around. But it was real nice that they offered to do that, and hopefully those books got picked up by many people. I don't really know for sure because I haven't heard back from too many.
Did you read it yourself?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, yep. And Wendy, Nella, are you familiar with that book? Because I'm not.
I know. I haven't read it.
No, because what jumps out for me is the fact that you've got plant-based diet and go vegan on the same kind of cover, which is interesting. So I don't know whether they successfully kind of make a difference between those two things, which would be good if they did, I think. But,
yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've read it, and I can't remember the exact specifics of that part, but for me, it struck a chord because I was a little bit older when I went vegan. I was 47 already when I went vegan. So I know that there's a lot of focus on trying to get younger people to go vegan, which I think is probably a really good idea, but I hate to close anybody out. I think it's great to outreach, every age group and everybody from all different backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely. And anybody can understand the philosophy if they've, well, not everybody, but you know what I mean. So shall we move on?
Hey, Mike Weinberg, good to have you here. Another good friend of mine.
And it's true. That's a very creative effort. And now that I'm thinking about it, influence libraries is a big thing. Or, for example, contacting the local library and see if they have books on animal rights. Ask them to bring some for people that work in libraries. For example, I was speaking with my sister, and she's volunteering for the school library. So we're talking about it, and I told her that maybe we should see if they have what kind of books they have on animal rights or on respecting other animals, because this is a kids' library. And if they don't, make an issue about it and ask them to order some.
That's a great idea, yeah, because a lot of people aren't, some of these books, especially the sort of textbooks, are not cheap either. So it's nice to have them available at the public library for folks to read.
Yeah.
Philip says Yanks are in the house. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, back in the day, the library was a real center of attention for, well, everybody involved with social movements, really, but certainly in terms of the vegan animal rights movement, in the sense that you used to be able to book a kind of display in the library, and also you could order the books in. And then what other people would do is they would go into the library and just put, leaflets in random library books, so people would discover them when they got them out. That was a major form of activism at one point in libraries.
Yeah.
And thinking about the whole community thing and the senior living sort of situation as well, that is something that really troubles me, because I just know, well, there's a lot of kind of care homes and nursing homes where I live, and I often think, I wonder if there are any vegans living there, and I wonder how it is for them. I wonder how life is when you're in that kind of home or facility being cared for, and you're not around other vegans. And I wonder how those people could be supported more as well. I don't know if anyone has any connections with that kind of environment or situation.
That's a great thought. I used to, before I was ever vegan, we used to go to local convalescent home and just take a guitar and just sing some songs to the residents. We just go from room. It wasn't anything particularly religious or anything, but just kind of some nice, like, just I would say sort of spiritual type of songs, but just kind of really new thought, I guess. So it's not from any specific religion, but they really, really appreciate it. And I think that what you just said is not something that I'd thought about before, but it would be great to have a small group that would be able to go to after, if and when the pandemic ever ends. It's like one of those things where I don't know if right now we probably wouldn't be going into these type of facilities, but at some point, I think it's a great idea.
I imagine now with all the people going into the the communities for elders now, the music will probably have to change. You'll probably be getting people asking for the Beatles and Stones and stuff rather than anything else nowadays.
Right.
So this one brought up I did anyway, on our planning meeting. We latched onto the love-based activism that you've got here, Mychael. So what's love-based activism?
First of all, I have to introduce Pepe. Pepe is the super cool little dog that hangs out with us every time. He's not on a leash and he doesn't go anywhere. He just kind of hangs out there with his friend Fatima and us. But the love-based activism was a group that. So in the photos, let's see, he's not in this photo, but I'll show you once we get to a different photo. But Alex, his name is Alex Edge. He lives here in San Diego also. And he came up with the original idea that, of going out and doing he was calling it love-based activism. I'm not sure if he got that from someone else or if he just made that up, but the idea was to go out and just have very calm, kind conversations with people, about animal rights and veganism on the street. We picked a spot in Balboa Park, which is like a great place in San Diego to talk to people, because there's a long strip in the center of a bunch of museums called the Prado, and it has places where you can set up, a booth, or it's kind of full on the weekends. There's a lot of people down there doing different things. But you can pretty much freely set. I don't know how it is there in Dublin, Roger, if you have to get any kind of permit or anything, but we don't have to get any kind of permit to do this as long as we're not selling anything. So, so we just kind of started off really, really small, as you can see. And we just put, Alex did end up buying a TV after, doing it for a few times, and we did play some footage. I know Jeremy had a chat, I believe it was in one of these TARS videos recently, talking about, or maybe it was an interview I heard Jeremy on, but it had to do, and it could have been on Wendy's podcast. So I listen to so many things, I like get mixed up on which one is which. But anyway, Jeremy was talking about the idea of switching over from playing videos of like horrific things happening to other animals, to videos of and images of animals in maybe really awesome situations. And so that was something we were kind of in the process of figuring out. I like the idea. I had been in groups that went out and showed videos of horrible things happening in the industries, animal agriculture industries. And in one way, I thought it was effective in that it got people to know something that they probably didn't know before. But I also, I felt really torn emotionally and even from just an effectiveness standpoint. And also not only that, but, and I think Jeremy might have talked about this also, but the fact that we activists put ourselves in this position where we're constantly bombarded with this horrific imagery. And I don't know exactly how that affects, hey, Rach is here too. Hi, Rach. Sorry, I missed you I'm trying to keep an eye on my computer too, to see who shows up here. But yeah, so I've kind of gone back and forth with whether I think that's a good thing to do or not. And I think that having some kind of images for people to look at is really helpful. Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, at the time we were playing Dominion, which obviously everybody here probably knows Dominion. It's pretty brutal. Is that there's probably an etymology that we could discuss. Brutal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it comes from brute. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
One of the outreach groups here tried to play the two kinds of videos side by side. And I remember looking at the footage, and it was really shocking, especially because you had a real graphic one with everything horrific happening there, and the other one, the same species in their natural environment. Somehow it made the injustice seem even bigger.
Yeah, this is comment from Jeremy, showing both their individuality as well as how they're bred, used, and murdered, which I found quite effective. I have family-friendly footage too as backup.
Yeah, in Dublin, when the Earthlings go out, they have they usually do the kind of Land of Hope and Glory stuff, but then we show footage from Ireland, which is mainly from national TV, so it's not that particular graphic. But then also some positive stuff. So there's a whole range of things, and I think they found that works quite well, rather than just having all the kind of graphic stuff. And I'm interested what Mychael would think of this, in the sense that
where's Mychael gone?
Where's he gone?
Michael's disappeared.
Oh no.
Just while Mychael comes back, by the way, we have where are we? Hang on. We might have to give a little detention out here.
Detention?
Mychael, oof, I'm late again. Hi, Mychael. Yeah, come stay behind for detention. And also another one here. Not this one.
These Mychaels are not very disciplined, are they?
Amber Vegan Girl is also in detention this evening. Stay after class, Amber. No, good to see you, Amber. Welcome.
So has Mychael just disappeared from our screens then, yeah?
And Brian's
here we go. Are you bringing him in, or am I? Otherwise we'll do that thing of...
I've done it. He's in.
Sorry about that.
Welcome back.
Hi, Mychael.
Smooth as ever.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't know how to stop. I got a phone call and it stopped the video. I'm not sure why. It shouldn't come through. I think I probably should have done a setting that I didn't do, but anyway, I'm back.
Well, that's your problem about being too popular, I guess, Mychael. That's a problem there.
It was probably someone I didn't want to talk to, though.
We've got a comment here from we've just been giving out detentions anyway, Mychael, for a couple of people regulars who are late. But Amber has said we enjoy Bite Size Vegan here, but you have a connection with Bite Size Vegan, don't you? Don't know if you want to share.
I did, yeah. I kind of helped Emily out for a few years, several years, and kind of from not too long until I became vegan in 2012, and I think I was helping her out, just doing this and that for her for like maybe 3 or 4 years, something like that. And she's great. I unfortunately haven't seen a lot from her in a while, and I think she's in the process of getting some stuff together, but I haven't talked with her in a little while. But she's got some really great material out there, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Quite concise, and she puts a lot of information into a small chunk, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael, we were talking about the street outreach with the with the screens, and were you still around when we were talking about having different types? Because
a little bit, yeah.
Yep. Because I was going to ask you this question about when you got groups focusing on the kind of graphic stuff all the time. People know that I'm kind of doing like a TikTok experiment, and what the farmers on TikTok are really complaining about is that they think that all our footage is kind of cherry picked. It's all the worst of the worst and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the vegans are saying, no, this is just standard practice and everything. The real problem, the kind of welfare base of the movement gets in the way here, because a lot of vegans want to say, no, it's all cruel and this kind of stuff, on the grounds that they can't really make a case for animal rights, which is a bit of a shame. And so they feel as though they've got to show really bad footage and claim it to be right across the board and right across the world and all the time. And of course, you're getting a lot of people working abattoirs, and you're getting a lot of farmers, and you're getting, it doesn't resonate with them because that's not exactly their own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not as bad, if you like, as that. And because we're not used to making the case, well, it doesn't matter how bad it is, it's a rights violation. There's a real kind of fight going on that, they're trying to make it look as good as possible, and we're trying to make it look as bad as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure from a sociological perspective, you have a lot to say about that. I do think that the argument for, like, in order to explain animal rights to somebody, you have to have a certain amount of time with them. And I think sometimes this like quick sort of in your face stuff it just takes a couple minutes. And so I wonder, what do you think about that? Does that, for instance, when you're doing your stall there in Dublin, do you tend to have conversations that start off immediately just talking about animal rights?
Yes and no, really. And often what will happen is that when we do make a rights-based argument, a lot of times, I mean, this has happened to me loads of times, is that people have said, oh, well, this is not what I expected. In other words, they thought they were going to get a kind of talk about cruelty and abuse and this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it ends up, especially if they're a farmer, mm-hmm. or somebody in the industry on some level, and they said, oh, well, this is not what we expected. But I do agree with you that it takes a bit more of a time, because half the time you're actually saying, well, look, this is an animal rights group, you're making an animal welfare point, and you mm-hmm. might have to say that 2 or 3 times before they really get it. And some of them will argue that, in the sense that we'll say, well, look, we're an animal rights group. We're not focused on cruelty and abuse. We're focused on animal use. And they'll often say, no, you're not, kind of thing. No. So they almost like impose welfarism on you in a way, which is interesting. So it does take time to get it around to that. And of course, on the street, people don't have the time a lot of the time. And, and then you also get people interrupting and stuff. It can be a bit chaotic in that sense. But yeah, we have had some of those conversations, and they have been quite good. It's just that you can't guarantee them by any check. You can't stage manage it. It's a kind of case by case and fingers crossed type thing.
Oh, anybody else here have experience? And Ella, what about you? Do you have experience with that type of thing on the street with animal rights, sort of almost starting off with animal rights as opposed to just showing footage and things like that?
What I actually do is I let them watch the horrific footage for a while, and then their mind goes to welfarism. But I ask them the question, does it matter how these persons are killed? Does it really matter? It makes it torturing someone before killing them is obviously making the whole thing worse. But does it really matter? Is it ethical if you you do it in a less painful way? And usually they answer the question by themselves and they say no. So we start from there. But it's true that you need to have a little time. Otherwise, when people are passing by, sometimes they ask the question, oh, what is this? And I won't answer, that's a rights violation. I usually say this is what happens to other animals. So humans can eat their flesh, for example, if they are just passing. Because I believe that images are haunting and we are a highly visual species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you, Wendy? Do you have a feeling about that?
Yes, a lot of my conversations recently, especially since COVID, it's been in different environments to just being out on the street as part of a group. It's been more kind of on an individual basis. And I suppose in a similar way to what Jeremy says in the comments, I try to talk, I don't kind of go into rights theory and philosophy or anything like that, but I try and talk about individuals and how almost kind of trying to look at it from, you know, if we were doing this to humans, how would this be when we're making animals kind of, we're exploiting them for their bodies, sexually to make them reproduce. We're forcing other animals to be in couples that they wouldn't choose. We're making them have babies, and then we're taking those babies away and using them for different purposes. And then obviously when we're using them, and then a lot of the times we're killing them, you know, and like Nelly was saying, does it really matter how we kill them? It's the killing that's wrong. So I try to sort of, I don't go into kind of rights theory and philosophy as such in terms of, you know, how Tom Reagan would frame it, but I try and focus on those aspects and get people to really think about other animals as individuals. And especially if they do have, you know, their companions that they're with. Often people will have a companion at home, a dog person, a cat person. Some people are very familiar with horse people, and you know, you can really get them to think about how they relate, the relationships that they have with those individuals, and say, you know, they can understand that they have emotions, that they understand the world. And I try to get them to really come from a place of empathy from that point of view, and then, you know, look at it from that perspective, I guess.
So, something that I find very useful is, especially not in the street, but in conversation with friends, acquaintances, whomever, is when some specific species are mentioned for whatever reason, rats, for example, and usually because they want to exterminate them, is to put up there a small piece of information about that specific species that I think that they will make them relate to them. For example, usually I say about rats that, do you know that rats have the ability to regret their own decisions? And usually people get shocked because they don't expect other animals to have sophisticated cognition. And I have the feeling that this makes them change their perspective, or at least not being violent towards that specific species at that point.
That's a big challenge, I think, because obviously, there are certain other animals that people put into the category of vermin. Of course, rats are one of those, and so you've got an added obstacle there. And you know, unless somebody is familiar with like fancy rats in a kind of pet sense, or they've seen footage of laboratory rats even, you know, but the kind of brown sewer rats, it's quite a challenge to kind of advocate for them in that sense. Right, I'm just going to reload this back up again, folks, so bear with me.
Look at those eyes.
Yeah. Do you think, Michael, that a larger or tighter activist vegan community would make us more effective while doing outreach?
Yeah, I mean, so you're asking if we had a better, a more stronger community, would we be better at going out and doing street outreach type stuff,
or whatever kind of activism, but especially, I mean, the theoretical side of it out.
Yeah, to me, it seems like the more people come together, and as a particular, from a particular bent, like if we're going out to talk to people about animal rights as opposed to just talking to them about, not cruelty, for instance. I think, I guess to me, a little bit of that community aspect is kind of developing, and this was something I kind of wanted to talk about today, was developing sort of a plan before you form the group, which is kind of hard to do because sometimes you're just like, let's just go try it. I mean, that's kind of what I've done in many cases. Just let's go try it. And then what can happen is little signs from organizations that you may not appreciate being there start showing up and things like that. So I think I guess in that way, a strong community, a strong central, it's tricky, right? Because I feel like sometimes too, you can get the people who develop the idea to go out and do it in the first place have they're almost like above everybody else. And so it can come to a point where the leadership might be going in a direction that the community doesn't really want to go in. And then you end up with issues like that. But as far as the community part that you asked me about, to me, it just in general, it's really important for us to have community as vegans. And that is something that, I mean, for me personally, when I became vegan, I didn't know any vegans. I knew absolutely not one vegan. And so I decided to start a couple of groups in my local area because I just didn't know anybody. And, little by little, of course, you start meeting vegans, you start going to meetups and things like that. But I would think there's a lot of places on this planet where you can't really even develop a local community. I mean, the four of us are all in fairly large areas. And I think most everybody that's on the chat is in probably a city where there's quite a few vegans, but just the fact that we have online communities and things like, can develop that way is really wonderful. But I don't know if that exactly answers your question. It just seems like community just seems important to me in all ways. And so to keep us feeling like we're part of something bigger than just ourselves. And when we go out, I mean, we can go out all by ourselves, but as most of it's pretty powerful to go out with a group and do some kind of activism in the street. When you go out by yourself, it's better than nothing, but it's definitely not as good to me as going out with a community.
It can be a lonely place out there. Right, I'll move this on. Did you say that dog was called Pepe?
Pepe, yeah, that's Pepe.
Yeah. Pepe.
It looks like a negative of a panda, doesn't it?
Oh, I was just going to ask about that whole going out on your own and going out in a group. Could that depend sometimes on personality as well?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Some people do well in groups and other people actually are loners and do feel a little bit more perhaps motivated to do things alone and not have to deal with the politics of being in a group and everything that goes with that. So I guess if people are so inclined, that can for them be quite an empowering thing, I suppose.
Yeah, and the idea that I talked about earlier, the street epistemology, almost all of those people that are practitioners of that particular thing, they're all going out on their own. It's one person going out, setting up something somewhere, in a park or just at a university or whatever. But I would think too, like people that are in general kind of loners, everybody, I mean, there's all different kinds of people, but it seems to me that people who are loners in other ways would also maybe have a little bit of a hard time going out on their own too. I mean, a lot of people that are loners or kind of introverted people.
Yeah. It can be a problem that on all kinds of ways. It's actually interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, I can kind of forget almost that there's probably still lots and lots of vegans who don't know any other vegans and they never meet any other vegans.
Mm-hmm.
Which is quite kind of shocking, really, in a sense, because you'd expect that 30 years ago maybe, but not now, kind of thing. But
yeah. It's I mean, even for me in a city like San Diego that's got a couple million people just within the city proper, I knew no vegans, or I didn't know that they were vegan. I don't even really think I knew vegans. So that tells me that if you go to a lot of other places that are a lot smaller than this, you're going to find a lot of people who are going to struggle with being the only vegan that, you know, in the whole place. I mean, that's where, to me, like, community is so important, is and where online community can come in really handy for a lot of people that are trying to develop a community within vegan, you know, within the vegan world.
The only vegan in the village. I wanted to ask you about this sign, "Do Your Morals" thing, which is interesting, that because you've got "probably so." Now that's an interesting way of approaching it, I think, in the sense that you got that situation that, you know, because a lot of people try to project vegans as the other, and, you know, I've got nothing to do with with vegans, and so this is kind of challenging them and saying, well, actually, you're probably pretty much in line with the idea of veganism. What do you think? And so how does that work out?
I think it works out really well. I think once you start talking to people about you know, what they believe, you know, when it comes right down to it, yeah, they have a lot of stuff telling them that, you know, that's just embedded into their mind that we are using animals as just part of the human experience. But when you actually start to ask them more questions about their thoughts around all of these ideas, a lot of times their ethics and morals do align with veganism in many ways. Maybe not in every single way, and maybe it might take them a while to get, you know, from some ideas to, like, you know, fully being animal rights, you know, people who are fully vested in animal rights, for instance. But yeah, I think it's a good question. And I also did, like, I don't think I made that particular sign, but the "probably so," I think it's kind of good in one way. And then in another way, I wonder if it makes people feel like you're trying to push them in a direction rather than just asking them a question. So I have kind of gone back and forth with, do I just ask the question, or do I also put, you know,
yeah, but it's almost like saying you might be surprised,
yes,
which might actually be the
surprised.
better,
Yeah,
that might be the better phrase to use in a way. But that's what it's saying, isn't it? In the sense that, you know, like I say, veganism is often seen by the mainstream as something else, you know, something really kind of out there and different, you know. So
yeah.
What about the other sign, about the violence one? Do you get a lot of? I mean, I would have thought that would probably lead a lot of people to make welfare claims. I would have thought, you know, I'm against violence, but it's okay to eat them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really, I find that really interesting that people, I have people close to me who are anti-violence, but they believe that it's okay to kill another being in order to eat them. I find that really just hard to figure out, like how you can not claim. You can say I'm against violence, but I'm for killing. I mean, I think what they're thinking is that someone is just sneaking up behind someone and taking their life very quickly to where they didn't even know what was going to happen. So maybe they don't see that as violence, but I still don't understand how actually taking a life can be seen as anything but violent.
Well, maybe they've read a bit of Peter Singer, Michael. I don't know, but it is an interesting one, because although we use the phrase slaughterhouses or houses of slaughter, people actually think that they're very benign places. You know, they've got this kind of mind's eye slaughterhouse where everything is fine and dandy kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also people just say, well, that's what they're here for. That is, I hear that so much. It's like, I know it's not great, but that's what they're here for. They wouldn't be here otherwise. So we bring them into the world in order to kill them. So they kind of feel that that's their role and their function. So they're kind of fine with that.
Yeah,
right.
You get a lot of that on TikTok, kind of. Well, if we didn't eat them, what the hell would we do with them? As though they have to have a function.
Right.
You know?
I know.
Yeah.
Because
what are they for?
What they're for, yeah. But I mean, they also in the free living world, they impose that kind of functionalist view as well. Because, for example, they will say that the gazelle is for the lion for food, and of course the gazelle is not for the lion. The gazelle is for the gazelle. Just so happens the fact that the lions prey on them. But they do have this functional thing in their mind. You get that over and over again.
Yeah, and Wendy, that thing about that you just brought up, I feel like that's another point where you can easily draw that out into a whole bunch of other questions and at least get someone to think about what they're saying. It's just so much of this stuff is just so embedded in our minds from the time we're little tiny people that it's really strong. It's like, as everybody here knows, it's just such a strong belief system, and that's where the whole street epistemology idea I like, because I found for myself learning about a lot of this stuff, and still to this day, I'm continue to learn, as we all do, and all of a sudden, I go from this guy who, when I first heard the word speciesism, just kind of rolled my eyes and thought it was really ridiculous, to someone who it just seems like second nature to me to think that speciesism exists. So I just think sometimes it's just a matter of questioning people, and questioning them respectfully. There's no reason to get out there and try to force someone to change their mind. They're not going to. It's just I think people tend to change their minds on their own, but with a little bit of a push from someone who may have thought about things a different way, I think it does help.
Now, this is an interesting slide. First of all, you were going to interview somebody, I think, from this picture, Mychael, I think.
I was going to interview somebody from that picture.
Or you were saying that there was somebody who set it up.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong picture. So in the upper left corner there, that's just a group that went out. Alex is the one on the right. He's the one that came up with the idea for doing this type of activism in the first place. And then the African American vegan starter guide was just something that was another idea of like something that you can get. You can actually just order these things. You all are not in America, so it may be I don't know if it'd be something that would be useful there, but Tracy McWhorter puts these out, and you can send a request, and they send you these things for free. And that was just one of the things that we put out on the table at the events that we had.
I want to know if it's illegal to rain in San Diego, because there's no cover, is there, in these pictures?
No, it's against the law here.
and then the big part of the picture raises a movement issue that we discussed earlier, which was the multicultural aspect of things, wasn't it? You were saying that San Diego is a very multicultural society.
Yep.
So that raises the question about who should, as it were, outreach whom, if you like. So how do you negotiate that, or don't you?
The way I'm no expert, and I probably will, like, if you ask me like a couple months from now or a year from now, I probably will have changed my mind somewhat. But the way I look at it is, we're all from, sometimes people will approach me and say, well, I'm from this particular culture. Like, I'm Mexican. We've been eating meat, we have to eat meat, everybody from their culture thinks that their culture is about eating animals. And so what I realize is that we're all from culture. I mean, everybody that I talk to is from a culture that eats animals and has used animals throughout, many eons. And so as far as approaching somebody, I would say I try to be sensitive about it in many ways, but at the same time, like, I'm just a person talking to another person. I'm a person from a certain culture that uses animals, speaking to another person from a culture that uses animals. So as far as what I see within the vegan world, I think there's quite a range of people from all different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds within veganism, and here in San Diego, it does seem to be quite cosmopolitan within the vegan community. But yeah, it's a tricky thing sometimes to negotiate, and the way I look at it is, I'm not really there telling you like your culture is. I'm not saying anything about your culture. I'm just asking questions and trying to get someone to think about these other ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I think we're allowed, as it were, to talk about the philosophy of veganism, and hopefully, what that will do is get them to ask questions about their own culture. That will be the ideal situation. So you don't have to critique it. You want them to critique it themselves in the same way as we critique our own culture. It's not as though, veganism is kind of part of the, culture critiquing business, isn't it? That's what we do all the time.
Right.
So.
And
it's interesting.
I'm sorry, just real quick. I will say that it does help to have people from different backgrounds in, obviously if there's a whole bunch of people from different backgrounds, if someone can talk to someone that's closer to that person's background, it's going to be really helpful, because I think a lot of people do see it as, okay, I'm from this particular culture. We do things this way. And I can't do anything about that. But where all of a sudden you see like this other person that looks like you, that has actually changed the way they think about these things. It's like, okay, that's just like one little thing that now you can move to the side. It's not like every single person within that culture or from that background feels that way.
Yeah, no, this is a really interesting topic, actually. I found this really interesting because we are definitely in the business of critiquing cultural practices that are violent and oppressive, including our own in our own cultures. And yet there is that question of, is the messenger as important as the message? And sometimes, it's how that message is delivered as well. So I suppose it's worth considering whether it's effective, because is the listener open to hearing that message from the person who's delivering it? Because people often listen to those that they either know, like, or trust, or whether they have an understanding of or recognize themselves in that person. And it just reminds me of something that Carol Adams said in the podcast that I did with her. She was talking about how when a lot of men in the movement who talk to women about, if you're a feminist, you should be not consuming dairy, consuming eggs, because this is a feminist issue. And she actually got quite passionate about it and said, come on, vegan men, stop this. Let the feminists talk to the feminists, because really you're kind of you're kind of ruining all the hard work by stepping in, because the message is not being heard by you. Women, like feminist women, do not want to hear the message from who they see from the oppressive group, and from men who are telling women what to do with their bodies again, sort of thing. So I think sometimes we do have to consider, and I don't think it's an absolute never or always. I think we just have to consider what might be effective, or how we approach who is the messenger in that case, and how we formulate that approach.
Absolutely.
As well.
I remember Carol talking about that on your show, and I think that's a very valid and fair point. And I think that it's for a white guy in America to go out and talk to people who are not white guys from America, there has to be a level of sensitivity about it. I mean, we can't just go out there and do what it's. I mean, I understand that I have I live in the world of colonialized places and thought and food and everything. And so just to go out there and kind of throw my weight around as if I'm there to, change somebody or make something happen within their mind or their community. It's very sensitive. And I think that Carol's point is very well taken. And part of the thing about that, like the African-American vegan starter guide, is I just put it out there. I'm not like telling, hey, here's a black person walking by. Hey, let me tell you about why you should be vegan because you're black, I'm planning on this thing. I'm just, it's there, and they're welcome to come and check it out. And it comes from black people. So I think, yeah, that's where I felt okay about putting that out. I don't know. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but that's kind of where I'm at right now anyway.
I think that we should make a point about using literature or making more known theories from authors or theories from different backgrounds. There is great value to that, to different points of views about the same issue. And I think it's something that helps us.
I think Carol even said it in that interview with Wendy. She said, give them a copy of The Sexual Politics of Meat. Give them. Yeah, I think.
She would though.
What's that?
And so she should. Yeah, definitely. It is an amazing book.
Yeah, absolutely.
I recommend it highly.
I do too.
Yeah, but buy 50 of my books off me and give them out.
Or go to the library and get them to get it in. I'm sure she'd be really an advocate of that, definitely.
There is an interesting tension here, though, isn't there? In the sense that we're talking about a community group here, kind of thing. And I think what Mychael said, which is you have to be sensitive, is different from what Carol said, which is kind of men shouldn't do it. And so there is that feeling sometimes that it's the wrong messenger. And so therefore, if you haven't got that type of message in your group, what then? That's the only thing that always kind of confuses me a little bit on it.
I was
silent.
Her point was not to use the specific argument. You are a feminist, you should be a vegan. Obviously, a male outreacher could use any other argument about veganism, but not the specific one. You are not a good enough feminist since you are eating other animals.
Exactly.
A woman outreacher could use that argument too, and probably should.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So I think it's how the message is put across as well. I was having that conversation with our Tom as well recently, and we were talking about that. But Brian, it's really unhelpful when you knock the microphone on. It's causing chaos. But yeah, and I think, and I don't know whether I would agree in saying men should never talk to women about this issue. I think I guess it would be, if you could introduce the kind of theories and ideas in a sensitive way, and like Mychael said earlier, get them to ask their own questions, just introduce the ideas and say, what would you think about this? How does that make you feel? But not come across as you should be doing this, like Nella just said. Don't be coming as self-righteous and trying to impose your thoughts onto them. I guess it's how you present it, isn't it?
The great thing about being face to face with somebody too is I feel like it's a lot easier to tell what is going to be okay to discuss and what's not, where online and text, in text form is so hard. And I just listened to you say that, made me think of a situation where I had a picture. I actually thought of sending it along for the PowerPoint, but I didn't. But there was a couple of young women who came up one day when we were out in the park, and one of them had a shirt on that I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was some kind of a sort of feminist message on it. And I asked her a question about how she felt about including non-humans in that sort of statement that she made on her shirt. And I wish I could tell you exactly what it said, but I don't remember. But she sat there and she thought for a moment, and she paused and she thought about it. And she said, that's a really good question. And it was like, okay, that's all I remember. It was a fairly short conversation, but my hope is that, just kind of busting some of that stuff loose a little bit by respectfully questioning somebody that's how I would like to be approached, So like if someone comes from another culture and approaches me, if they just come up and start like telling me how things are, it's going to be pretty hard for me to want to, hang out with them for very long. But if they just ask me some questions about my beliefs, I think, respectfully ask, I just feel like I'm a lot more open to thinking about those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Respectful questions, just being curious and getting people to just planting seeds with people and getting them to really think about things is probably so much more effective than just going, you should be doing this, you're wrong. I really disagree with you. And this is what you're doing is just awful. Because I think immediately just in how we're wired, we just get defensive and put up the barriers straight away, don't we?
I hear people saying, once in a while when I bring this up with others, usually it's online, and the whole online thing is very tricky. But how many times have you had someone shame you into changing your behavior? Like for me, not very many. I don't normally respond very well to someone shaming me, but when someone is genuinely, when I feel that they genuinely care about me as a person, and they're asking me questions and kind of getting me to think about things, it gives me the opportunity to, like, not, first of all, I'm just not throwing up a wall instantly.
Yeah.
I'd like to build on what you said, Wendy, in the sense that I think this is a really strong point. I think some of the activists kind of get this wrong in a way, because there's a big difference between telling people what to do in that kind of way you're talking, Mychael, about being, told what to do and shamed and everything, and versus telling them what veganism is. And I think that's a really important distinction, and that's why I've always said that the reason that we don't have an animal rights movement is because we've never been able to have clarity of what animal rights is, and so therefore the public have not been able to assess it. But that's what I see outreach as doing. You were saying planting seeds, Wendy, but it's kind of like saying, well, hey, this is what veganism is. What do you think? Rather than kind of telling them what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's a comment from Jeremy which is really interesting, and actually might lead us into, I don't know how much time we have and how much time we're going to take on all of this, but no, not that one. Sorry, wrong one. Where's it gone? I lost it. Oh, there we go. I wonder how much of this topic is about building stronger communities with our fellow animals too, such as at animal sanctuaries, because we do want to cover that a little bit, don't we? I'm just wondering, have we got the time to do it today, or are we going to extend to a part 2? I'm just checking in with all you folks.
I'm good. I've got time.
You got time. Excellent.
So you've got fish save.
Yeah, so we don't have any slaughterhouses per se in San Diego. Like, up in LA, there's a slaughterhouse. It's the Farmer John's, whatever they call it. I don't think they call it a slaughterhouse. But people go up there for the save movement, where I'm sure everybody here is familiar with what Save does. And so because we don't have a slaughterhouse of that sort in San Diego, some folks, local folks, and this is not me, but some other friends of mine came up with this idea to go out to this place called the Tuna Harbor Dockside Market, and just kind of do some outreach. I don't really know exactly what you call this, because it is actually bearing witness in a way, because if you walk out, I don't have pictures of this so much, but if you walk out onto the jetty there, all these boats come up with the fishes that they have captured, and they just go directly from the boats onto this dock, and they sell their bodies right there. And there's thousands perhaps at a time, not hidden at all, like the way they hide, away pigs, for instance, being murdered. They don't really have to, because people aren't really most people aren't really in tune with fish, as everybody here knows, fishes. So there's it's kind of a weird situation. These are local fisher people who take a lot of pride in what they do, and they're almost like, in some ways, I feel like they're the sort of regenerative agriculture people of the fish, the fishing business, the hunting fishes business. So it's a really interesting place to be, because most everybody that goes down there to buy fish thinks, okay, we're going to buy this, it's great, it's environmentally friendly, it's all sustainable, and these people are supporting their families by this. It's like this really small scale operation. Rach Hosler, who's with us here, is involved with this also. Live market. Yeah, she's saying it's a live market. Right, it's a live market. So anyway,
what kind of reactions did you build from the fisher folk and also the buyers?
We've gotten a lot of anger, a lot there. When I was there, at least there was always somebody who came over and was really pissed off that we were there at all. And sometimes the people who are actually selling the bodies would come over and have a kind of a heated, at least heated on their side. I think pretty much everybody on the save side of things, as far as I could see, always stayed fairly calm and had just try to have a discussion. But yeah, so there was always some anger from the people there that were, in the business of catching the animals and selling their bodies there. And then there was a lot of curiosity from people that came by either on their way to buy the flesh of these animals or just not or just happened to be walking by that would just stop and talk to us. So from my perspective, like as an outreach situation, this was one form of outreach that I've been a part of in San Diego. And like for me personally, outreach is like the thing that I just kind of like to do. So that's wherever I go, when I'm at places like this, that's what I'm doing is outreach. So that's why I put the picture in there. But it's it's interesting, very interesting. It's almost like people. One local writer who has a magazine, or he wrote for this magazine, San Diego magazine, and then I believe he bought it recently. He wrote an article about us and what we were doing, and I'm happy to share that. We can share it, and I don't know. Do you guys have a way to add things to the document there after the meeting?
To the slideshow?
To the notes down below.
We can do it as a comment.
As a comment, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll share that. I did a response article to something that he said, but I thought it was pretty interesting because his whole thing was like, okay, why are you picking on these people? It's like going out to the local, 4-H kids property and protesting, that he's raising a pig in his yard or something. It's like that's how they see this and so from an animal rights perspective, Roger, like you talk about all the time, it doesn't matter. It's all, it's exactly the same thing. And so that's what I guess that, again, that's what we need to focus on, right? Is the use of animals, use of other animals and the animal rights portion of it, not focus on, because that most people are looking at this from, was it you, Roger, that said the other, I think it was you who was saying that, most people in society are welfareists. I mean, most people see like levels of how we take care of animals and how we treat animals. And so if we go all the way to the level of just talking to people about the rights of animals, the rights of individuals and how these rights are being violated in every situation like this, then that changes the whole conversation.
Yeah, well, we are certainly born into a society in which welfarism is kind of part and parcel of the entire setup of using them and everything. Because we can use them so long as we don't we're not cruel and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we have we're about halfway through your PowerPoint, Mychael, and
okay.
We're also kind of about the right time to end, really. So do we fancy a part 2? Would you be available for next week, do you think?
I'll have to look at my schedule, but I would say if it's not next week, I can probably do it in the next few weeks.
Right. Okay. So maybe we'll have to just let me just bring that down.
Yeah, because poor Mychael has to take a day off work, don't you, Mychael?
It's a lot earlier here than it is there.
Oh, right. Okay.
But I would love to continue this. So let me just check my schedule and I'll get back to you, Roger.
Yeah. So you're bunking off work to do this, are you, Mychael?
Yeah, that's right.
Love it. Excellent. No, because it'd be really great to get into the interspecies communities. I'd love to actually not rush through that, because I think if we did it now, we'd have to kind of rush through everything, and that I think will be, and the grief and trauma, interspecies grief and trauma, I think will be really interesting.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do another
spend
one.
time on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
How does everyone else feel in the chat about that? Part 2. Mychael part 2.
This is great.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you guys so much for taking your time and energy to put this together. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you for
Thank you
coming
for doing
on and
this.
taking the day off from work. Yeah. it's been
Okay,
really
so
great.
we want to thank everybody for coming along and for your contributions in the chat. There was a really interesting conversation about door dropping and about the different countries about the actual illegality or otherwise of putting leaflets through people's doors or into their boxes and stuff, which is quite interesting. So that was interesting. So so people, thank you for coming along, and we shall be back with Mychael when he can bunk off work next.
Excellent. Part 2. Deb says part 2. Yes, Deb is up for it.
Awesome.
All right. Okay.
Thank you, everybody that came. I really appreciate it. I was trying to focus on what people were saying and not looking at the comments too much, but I will go back and read the comments afterward.
Yeah, the way it works is that the recording is available straight away, but it takes a couple of hours before the chat comes back. But then when you play it back, you'll be able to see the chat as well. So that's the way it works.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, people. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks everyone.
Thanks
to
everybody.
everyone in the chat. I really appreciate your comments as always.